whether it be physical practice or meditation, there are so many reasons not to. And what it is really just finding the one reason, which is creating a higher connection, diving into the self, understanding your true nature a little bit more. And if you can remember that, and it really outweighs all of the not reasons, then it makes it a little bit more purposeful when you do it. It's hard. People don't want to fail. That's a good reason not to. They don't want to deal with the basement junk. When you're in a studio and the teacher has created this ideal environment for you, it's really easy to avoid your crap. And especially when they say all these really great things to you at the beginning. Because when you're at home, you generally don't say those same really great things to yourself before you practice. Which is why there's a whole process. I'm wearing my Ganesh t-shirt right now. I almost wore it, and then I was like, nah, and now I'm like, why did you wear a Ganesh t-shirt? He has 4 arms. And each limb is a step in progress toward the removal of an obstacle. So he's a remover of obstacles. And his first hand, he's holding a sword or a hatchet or something, like some sort of cutting device. And that symbolizes the ability to cut through doubt. So what's the first step to removing an obstacle? Cut through doubt. That you can't do it, because you can. Second hand, actually it's usually over here. He's, depending on who created the image or statue, it's sometimes a lotus flower, which I don't really know what that means, or more traditionally it's a rope. I think they just switched it from rope to lotus flower because it's prettier, to be honest, but it's usually a rope, traditionally, and the rope is kind of like lassoing the problem and then like pulling it in. Like, I'm diving into the problem now, and I'm going to do the problem. Which is where people usually think it ends. Like, okay, now I'm done. Because I cut through doubt, I built up a little bit of confidence, and then I did the problem. I took care of it, it's done now. What's the next step after that? Most people have no idea. Do you do anything after you complete a problem? Sit and read. Yeah. That's great, actually, yes. What were you saying?
I just heard her say celebrate.
Yeah. Yeah. You enjoy the sweetness of success. So in his third hand, he's holding his favorite dessert. Because after you get through a problem, if you don't enjoy the sweetness of that success, chances are you're not really going to fully deal with the problem. So, and I think that's like really normal in our culture. To like, oh, I can do this problem, and then you do it, and then you're like, what's the next problem? You just immediately move on to the next one, and you don't give yourself any time to enjoy the big thing you just did. So, cut through doubt, lasso your problem, do it, eat dessert. Enjoy the sweetness. And then his fourth hand is held like this, in the symbol of peace. Because if you can cut through doubt, get through the problem, enjoy the sweetness of success, chances are you're going to be a very peaceful person after that process. And if you can maintain that state of peace, the next time you have a problem, it's going to be a little bit easier to cut through doubt, to lasso the problem, to enjoy the sweetness of your success, and to find peace again. So it's kind of like a circle, just continues on. So that's what his 4 arms represent. And I like to think of Ganesh when I'm thinking of practice. So when we get down to our practice, what's the very first thing we're afraid of? Being uncomfortable. So you center and you say something nice. I'm devoted to myself. I'm devoted to my growth. I love my practice. I'm whatever. And that kind of brings you into a place where you're like, I can do this practice, I can do this work, I can get through this time, and grow from it. And then, step 2, you're lassoing the problem. That's your practice. Whether it be physical practice or meditation. The work is the practice. So number 2 is a big one. But number 2, usually think that's all there is, because in our culture, again, we've been taught that like the solution to the problem is the only part of the system and getting through a problem. So if we come and do our practice, we're like, who cares about the beginning and end? Who cares about Shavasana? I'm here to work. So we come in and we do the hard part. When we're at home and we do our own practice, how many of us just do the asana? There's no centering, there's no Shavasana, there's no clothes, it's just the work. Because we think that's all there is to it. That's only 2. Kind of like when people hear yoga and I'm like, oh, what is your yoga practice like? And they're like, oh, you know, like the vinyasa or whatever. And I'm like, well, like what do you like about it? Like what is it in yoga? And all they know is the physical practice. All they know is asana. So when we get into our work, all we think is the work. So you center yourself, you do the work, and afterward, you close the work. So in your physical practice, Shavasana is the sweetness of success. You're absorbing your work, and it's like, oh great, I gotta lay here? Are you kidding me? I take a nap and someone will wake me up, and then the rest of my day's fine still? Perfect. The sweetness of success. And then, 4th stage, that's the closing. So if you meditate, your Shavasana is maybe just sitting there. I know a lot of the time we don't have time to kind of do that here, but in my own practice, I just kind of sit there for a few moments and just like, let it sink in. It doesn't have to be 5 minutes or whatever, just a few breaths. Just kind of breathe into my heart for a second. And then I do my closing, which is like the piece of it all. So the next time, I'm more eager to do my practice. Changing the way you practice and the system of your practice will completely change if you want to practice or not. It makes it so much more special. And if there's, so much more intention behind it, of course you're going to want to practice more versus just doing a few poses. No one wants to do that. I hate doing that. Of course no one wants a home practice if they don't understand what home practice is. This is home practice, creating a system that's special to you. And kind of following this order I have found to be the most helpful. At least that's the way I